Have you ever felt something was wrong, but no one believed you? Have you ever looked into the eyes of a child and seen fear they couldn't explain? Today, I want to tell you a story. Not just any story, but a wake-up call. A story that may shake you. A story that might hurt, but also one that will give you strength. Because silence is the ally of harm, and speaking out, even when it's hard, saves lives. This is the story of love stronger than fear, of a grandmother who would move heaven and earth to protect her granddaughter, and of how even in the darkest night, someone's light can change everything. The rain came down like a curtain that night, heavy and relentless, smearing shadows across the walls and glass. Lightning lit up the hallway intermittently, as if nature itself were searching for the truth hiding in the dark. Inside that quiet house, a little girl trembled under the blankets of her grandmother's bed. Her name was Clara, 8 years old, eyes wide with a fear too deep for words. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply stared at the half-open bedroom door like it might come alive. That stillness, that silence, it was louder than any thunder. And that silence is where the truth lives, waiting to be found. If you've ever felt that something wasn't right but had no proof, you'll understand what comes next. Because Clara was hiding something no child should ever have to carry. Her grandmother, Celeste, noticed the changes long before this night. The once playful little girl had grown quiet, distant. She no longer brought books for bedtime stories, no longer laughed at the silly voices her grandmother would make. Her eyes didn't sparkle. Her games had stopped. Her smiles were forced. And Celeste, who had raised a daughter on her own, who had worked night shifts in hospitals, knew pain when she saw it. She just didn't know the source. But on this particular night, the storm outside echoed the storm inside Clara's heart. And in that fragile moment, Clara spoke. 3 words. Just 3. He touches me. Words no grandmother is ever prepared to hear. And yet, Celeste didn't flinch. Because when a child breaks their silence, the adult must break their world to protect them. Celeste held Clara tightly, trying to steady the storm in her own chest. Her mind raced. Questions collided. Who? When? How long? But even more pressing, what now? Clara's voice was a whisper, her body small and stiff with fear. Does anyone else know? Celeste asked, gently brushing the girl's hair. Clara shook her head. Does he live with us? Another nod. Celeste already knew the answer before the words confirmed it. Roberto, her daughter's brother, the man who moved in after losing his job. Always too generous with gifts, always too eager to babysit. Something in Celeste had never trusted him, but she never imagined this. Now, her gut feeling had a name, and her mission was clear: protect Clara at all costs, even if no one else believed her. The next morning, the house seemed the same, but everything had changed. Roberto strolled into the kitchen with a fake smile and the smell of coffee. Carla, Clara's mother, laughed like any other day. The normalcy was maddening. Clara sat in silence, her eyes low, her hands trembling slightly as she held her spoon. Celeste watched every move like a hawk, every gesture, every glance. She was no longer just a grandmother. She had become Clara's shield, her sword, her silent warrior. And yet, she said nothing, because timing mattered, because acting too fast could cost her everything. Clara needed to be believed. That meant proof. It meant planning. And above all, it meant control. Celeste could not afford a single mistake. That same day, Celeste began observing more carefully. She noted how Clara would flinch when Roberto got too close, how her posture shrank in his presence, how her gaze darted like a trapped bird looking for an exit. These were not coincidences. They were clues, and Celeste knew she had to collect them all, like puzzle pieces, like breadcrumbs, like a map that would one day lead to justice. But she couldn't do it alone. So she started writing everything down. Dates, times, behaviors, any detail, no matter how small. Because one thing she had learned as a nurse was that patterns don't lie. People do. The truth leaves trails, even when hidden in shadows. And Celeste was going to find them. She began searching Roberto's room when no one was home, looking for anything at all. And at first, nothing. Clothes, work papers, a laptop locked with a password. But then, tucked under the bed, she found it. Clara's favorite stuffed bear, the one that had gone missing weeks earlier, torn at the seams, dirty, out of place. Celeste held it in her hands like a sacred relic. It wasn't conclusive, but it was something. It was a crack in the mask, and it fueled her to keep going. Later that night, she purchased a discreet voice recorder, then a camera, tools of evidence, tools of protection. She wasn't just collecting memories, she was building a case. Because if no one else would believe a scared little girl, she would make them. That night, she spoke with Clara again. "Whatever happens, you are not alone," she said. "I believe you. I'm here, and we're going to stop him." Clara said nothing, but she nodded, and that was enough. Because trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But once it begins, it grows fast, like a tree pushing through cracks in concrete. Celeste didn't sleep. She didn't need to. Her mind was alive with strategy. Her heart was heavy but determined. The time for silence was over. The time for action had begun. She knew there would be resistance, denial, blame, but she was ready. She had seen too many families fall apart in her years working with victims, and she would not let that happen to her own. Not this time. The days that followed felt like walking on glass. Every interaction was a performance. Celeste smiled when she had to, nodded when expected, but inside, she was watching everything. She monitored Roberto's routines, memorized his comings and goings. She studied Clara's reactions, her silences, her body language, the way she physically avoided him. At night, Celeste would play the recordings, searching for whispers, footsteps, doors creaking. Most of it was ordinary, until it wasn't. One evening, she heard Clara's soft voice say, "No, I don't want to," followed by the unmistakable sound of a door closing. It was enough to freeze her blood. It was also enough to keep going, because now she wasn't just guessing. She had something real. Celeste knew it was time to confront her daughter. Carla had been blind to the signs, trapped in her own exhaustion and grief. She had lost her husband. She worked long hours. She trusted her brother. That trust was now a weapon. Over dinner, when Clara was asleep, Celeste sat her down. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse. She simply said, "Clara told me something, and you need to hear it." At first, Carla laughed it off. Then she grew angry. "He would never," she said. "That's your imagination." But Celeste didn't back down. She described everything, the bear, the drawings, the recordings, and still, Carla refused to see. Denial is powerful. It protects what we want to be true, even if it kills us in the process. That night, Clara had another nightmare. Her screams ripped through the silence like sirens. Celeste ran to her room, holding her close, calming her. Carla stood frozen in the doorway, watching, and in that moment something broke. The way Clara clung to her grandmother, the way her tiny body flinched at the sound of footsteps. It couldn't be denied anymore. Carla didn't say a word. She simply walked away. But Celeste knew. She had seen it now. She couldn't unsee it. Sometimes the truth needs to be felt, not explained. And this truth had shattered the last wall of disbelief. It wasn't over, but they weren't alone anymore. For the first time, it wasn't just Celeste fighting for Clara. With Carla's support, Celeste took the next step, the police. The process was long, cold, and clinical. Clara had to be interviewed again and again by specialists. The trauma was reopened like an old wound, but Celeste held her hand through it all. Carla, too, once resistant, now stood as a pillar beside them. They showed the officers everything. The drawings, the recordings, the messages, the teddy bear, the journal Celeste had kept. The investigators nodded, asked questions, and promised to follow up. But promises are just words. What they needed was protection. What they needed was action. A restraining order was issued. Roberto was forced to leave. But even then, the fear lingered. Because abusers don't stop with distance, they find new ways to reach. A week later, a message arrived. Anonymous, but clear. If I check Clara's phone, what would I find? The threat was unmistakable, subtle but sharp. Celeste felt her stomach twist. It was Roberto. He hadn't disappeared. He was watching, waiting, pushing back. But instead of breaking down, Celeste hardened. Fear became fire. She contacted an old friend, Manuel, a retired police detective she had worked with years ago. He believed her instantly. He'd seen this before, too many times. He offered her something the system couldn't: protection that moved faster than paperwork. A plan. A way to catch Roberto in the act if he tried again. It was dangerous, risky, but worth it. Because Clara's safety wasn't negotiable. Not anymore. Manuel provided a new camera. Smaller, smarter, hidden in a phone charger. It streamed directly to a secure server and recorded everything. Celeste replaced the older device with this one and added more. One in the hallway, one in the living room, another disguised in a picture frame outside Clara's room. This wasn't paranoia. It was survival. They weren't just hoping for justice. They were documenting every step. Roberto didn't know. That was the advantage. Over the following days, Clara seemed lighter, as if sensing a shift in energy. She started drawing again. She laughed once. Not a full laugh, but enough to remind Celeste of who she really was. A child, a soul worth saving. Every smile was a victory. And then it happened. Roberto returned, claiming he forgot something. Harmless. Convenient. Carla was at work. Clara was reading in the living room. Celeste watched from the kitchen, phone in hand, cameras rolling. He approached Clara too casually, too smoothly, like routine. But before he could say more, Celeste stepped in. "She's not alone," she said firmly, "and she never will be again." Roberto tried to laugh it off, tried to charm, but the tension was unbreakable. The mask was cracking. He knew it, she knew it, and every second was recorded. As he left, his face changed. No longer pretending, just pure menace. That footage, along with everything else, was the final piece. Enough to take it to court, enough to end the silence once and for all. What happened to Clara is not fiction. It's a mirror, a painful reflection of what so many children live through in silence. Sometimes, right under our roof. Sometimes, at the hands of those we least expect. And too often, with no one willing to see. But silence is no longer an option. Turning away is no longer an excuse. We are responsible, not just as parents or grandparents, not just as guardians or teachers, but as human beings. Protecting the innocent is not a favor. It is a duty, one that starts when we choose to believe, one that continues when we choose to act. If you suspect something, speak. If a child trusts you with their truth, listen, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it shatters the illusion of safety, because the cost of ignoring that voice is unthinkable. Abuse doesn't always leave bruises. Sometimes it leaves broken spirits. And those wounds, the invisible ones, are the hardest to heal. But they can be healed. Through love, through action, through truth, and above all, through God. Because justice alone is not enough. We need restoration. And that comes from a higher power. A love that redeems what evil tried to destroy. I want to tell you this clearly. If you feel alone in this fight, you're not. If you're someone who has lived through something like Clara, or you know someone who has, there is hope, there is healing, there is a future. But it starts with bringing darkness into the light. Don't carry the weight in silence. Speak, testify, seek help. And if you're watching this and you know a child who's pulling away, who seems afraid, whose light is fading, don't wait for certainty. Trust your instinct. Step in. Be their Celeste. Be their shield. And if this message has spoken to your heart, I ask you now, subscribe to this channel and follow Jesus. This isn't just about staying updated with videos. It's about joining a mission to defend the vulnerable, to bring truth where there's confusion, to bring light where there's darkness. When you follow this channel, you're saying, I will not stay silent. I will stand for what's right. I will follow Christ, the defender of the broken, the voice for the voiceless. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. You never know who's silently suffering. You never know who's praying for a sign. Let this message be that sign. Let it open eyes. Let it ignite action. We can't save every child, but we can fight for the ones God places in our path. And that starts with speaking up, standing firm, and choosing faith over fear. Before we end, I want you to know, I see you, I care about you, and more importantly, God sees you. Whether you're a survivor, a parent, a teacher, or someone just trying to do the right thing, Thank you for your heart, for your courage, for your compassion. Keep going, keep believing, keep protecting. Our strength is multiplied in unity, and together we are building a world where darkness doesn't get the final word. Take care of the ones you love. Stay vigilant, stay faithful, and stay close, because in this community, you are never alone. Subscribe, follow Jesus, and come back here because your voice matters, your heart matters, and together we are stronger. See you soon.